Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe and turn on notification.
Elias Vance always believed that life was a series of equations waiting to be balanced. At 29, he was a senior actuary for a major insurance firm in Seattle. His job was to assess risk, to calculate the probability of disaster, and to assign a dollar value to human error. He was good at it. He lived his life with the same rigorous precision. His apartment was monochrome. His schedule was immutable. And his emotions were regulated. Then he met Sienna. Sienna was the variable he had not accounted for. She was 24 years old. She worked as a wellness coach and instructed Pilates at a studio in Capitol Hill. If Elias was a grid of straight lines, Sienna was a watercolor spill. They met not at a bar or a mutual friend's party, but in line at a pharmacy. Elias was buying ibuprofen for a tension headache. Sienna was buying essential oils. She had commented on his tie, a severe, dark blue silk, telling him it looked like he was being strangled by a corporate snake. Elias, who usually detested unsolicited conversation, found himself correcting her. He told her it was a Windsor knot, the most stable of all knots. She laughed. It was a sound that disrupted his internal frequency. From that first date, the magnetism was undeniable. It was the attraction of opposites. Sienna spoke of chakras, energy flow, and the grounding power of the earth. Elias listened, not because he believed her, but because her worldview was a fascinating data set he had never explored. She saw magic where he saw physics. 2 years later, they were married. It was a small ceremony in May, overlooking the Puget Sound. Elias felt, for the first time, that he had secured a high-value asset. They rented a refurbished craftsman house in West Seattle. Near the ferry terminal, it was quiet. It was efficient. Elias worked from his home office, surrounded by multiple monitors and spreadsheets, while Sienna taught her classes in the city or hosted private clients in their sunroom. The routine was established. It was solid. They cooked on weekends. They watched documentaries. Elias believed he had constructed a perfect life. The risk assessment was low. The projected happiness yield was high. 3 months after the wedding, on a Tuesday morning in August, the first anomaly appeared in the data. Sienna was whisking eggs for breakfast. She paused, looking out the window at the gray sky. "I signed up for a course," she said. Elias did not look up from his tablet. "Professional development?" "Personal," she said. "Italian. Intensive. Language immersion." Elias stopped scrolling. He looked at his wife. She was wearing an oversized sweater, her hair in a messy bun. She looked innocent. "Italian? Why?" "I have always wanted to go to the Amalfi Coast," she said, pouring the eggs into the pan. "I thought, if we ever go, I should know how to order wine, how to speak to the locals. It is about expanding horizons." Elias processed this. It seemed logical. Self-improvement was a trait he admired. It showed ambition. "When are the classes?" "Thursdays," she said. "Every Thursday afternoon. It is a group meetup at a cultural center downtown. We practice conversation, learn about the art. It is immersive." "Cost?" Elias asked. Reflexively. "Minimal," she replied. "It is community-led." Elias nodded. Approved. "It sounds productive." He thought it was charming. He liked the idea of Sienna adding a skill that could be useful for future logistics. He trusted her. Trust, after all, was the constant in the marital equation. If the constant was removed, the equation collapsed. He did not know then that the data was already corrupted. The Thursdays began. Elias marked them in his mental calendar as Sienna. Unavailable, 1400 hours to 1800 hours. For the first 4 weeks, the routine was flawless. Sienna would leave the house carrying a large canvas tote bag. She wore comfortable clothes, leggings, loose tunics, scarves, which she claimed were necessary because the classroom was drafty. She would kiss him on the cheek, smelling of lavender soap, and promised to bring back pasta for dinner. Elias stayed in his office. He analyzed mortality tables. He calculated the risk of flood damage in the Midwest. He did not calculate the risk of his wife lying to him. But Elias was an observer by nature. He noticed patterns. Sienna returned at 6 in the evening. She was glowing. Her skin was flushed. A deep, radiant pink that usually only appeared after vigorous exercise or prolonged exposure to heat. How was the conjugation of verbs? Elias asked, pouring himself a glass of water. Difficult, Sienna said. Breathless. She dropped her heavy bag by the door with a thud. The subjunctive tense is a nightmare. But Marco helped me. Marco? A student. He is a chef. And Dante. He plays the cello. We have a good group. Elias noted the names. Marco. Dante. Male associates. Statistically common. He dismissed a spike of irritation. You look exhausted. It is mental exhaustion, she said. Smiling. She went straight to the shower. Elias was in the kitchen when she left. He noticed she had packed a towel in her tote bag. Why the towel? He asked. Sienna did not flinch. Her heart rate did not appear to elevate. It is raining, she said. I use it to dry my hair if I get soaked walking from the parking garage. Elias looked outside. It was drizzling. Plausible. When she returned that evening, the towel was damp. But it did not smell like rain. It smelled like salt. Brine. The heavy, organic scent of the Pacific Ocean. Elias sat at the dinner table, watching her eat. She was voracious. Did you go to the ocean? He asked. Casually. Sienna paused. Her fork halfway to her mouth. No. Why? You smell like salt water. She laughed. It was a nervous sound, a frequency that grated on him. Oh. That. Marco brought some sea salt focaccia. The smell must have clung to me. It was delicious. Elias did not smile. He filed this under. Inconsistency. Rainwater does not smell like brine. Focaccia does not scent a towel. Elias did something he had never done. He engaged in surveillance. When Sienna was in the shower, he went to her car. It was a practical compact SUV. He checked the odometer. He recorded the number. The cultural center was 8 miles away. Round trip. 16 miles. When she returned the following Thursday, he checked the odometer again. The car had traveled 42 miles. There was a variance of 26 miles. Elias stood in the garage, the warmth of the engine radiating against his legs. 26 miles. That was not a detour for gas. That was a destination. He looked at the floor mats. Sand. Fine, gray sand. Mixed with tiny fragments of shell. He went back inside the house. Sienna was humming in the kitchen. She looked happy. She looked free. Elias felt a coldness spread through his chest. It was not heartbreak. It was the realization that he was working with falsified data. The system was compromised. He did not confront her. Not yet. An actuary does not present a case without irrefutable proof. He needed to verify the location. He pulled up a map of the area. He drew a radius of 21 miles from their house. The radius intersected with the coastline. Specifically, the northern tip of a secluded peninsula. Known for its jagged cliffs and isolation, trust was no longer the foundation. Verification was. It was a Thursday, in late August. The weather was erratic. Heavy rain in the city. But radar showed breaks of sun along the coast. Elias was in a video conference with the regional directors. They were discussing the liquidity of a failing subsidiary. The voices in his headset were droning on about assets and liabilities. Elias was distracted. His phone, placed face down on his desk, began to vibrate. It was Jonas. Jonas was Elias's only close friend. A landscape photographer who spent his days chasing light and shadows. Jonas was blunt, reliable, and possessed zero tact. He rarely called during business hours. Elias ignored it. The phone vibrated again. And again. Elias apologized to the directors. muted his microphone, and turned off his camera. He answered. "This had better be an emergency, Jonas." "It depends on your definition," Jonas said. His voice was low, obscured by the sound of wind. "Elias. I am at Black Rock Beach. On the North Shore." Elias felt his stomach tighten. "Why are you telling me this?" "I am shooting a portfolio piece on erosion," Jonas said. He paused. "I see her." "Elias. Who?" But Elias knew. The calculation was already complete. "Sienna. Your wife. She is here." Is she speaking Italian?" Elias asked. His voice laced with a bitter sarcasm that surprised him. "No," Jonas said. "She is naked. Completely naked. She is lying on a blanket with two men. Also naked. I am looking through a telephoto lens, Elias. There is no mistake. It is Sienna." The silence in Elias's office was absolute. The hum of the computer fans seemed to scream, "Are they?" Elias could not finish the sentence. "They are talking," Jonas said. Laughing. "It looks social. But they are nude, Elias. Publicly. Well, on a secluded beach, but still. Do you want me to drop a pin on the map?" "Send it," Elias said. He hung up. He did not return to the meeting. He closed his laptop, severing the connection with his professional life. He grabbed his car keys. The drive was a blur of gray asphalt and green pines. Elias drove with dangerous precision. He did not speed out of rage. He sped to close the gap between ignorance and knowledge. His mind raced, attempting to run simulations. Scenario A. Jonas is wrong. Probability low. Jonas had the eyes of a hawk. Scenario B. It is a misunderstanding. Probability 0. Nudity is binary. You are, or you are not. Scenario C. She has been lying for 7 weeks to engage in exhibitionism. Probability high. The sand in the car. The smell of the ocean. The mileage. The towel. It all fit. The equation balanced perfectly. And the result was betrayal. He arrived at the trailhead. There were only 3 other cars in the dirt lot. One was Sienna's. Elias turned off his engine. He sat for a moment, adjusting his watch. He checked his pulse. 110 beats per minute. Too high. He took a deep breath, forcing his biology to submit to his will. He stepped out of the car. The air was thick with salt. He began to walk down the trail. The path to Black Rock Beach was winding, flanked by tall dune grass and scrub pine. The sound of the waves grew louder, masking the sound of his approach. Elias walked with heavy, deliberate steps. He felt like an executioner, walking to the scaffold. He crested the dune and looked down. The beach was a crescent of gray sand, sheltered by high cliffs. The sun had broken through the clouds, casting a spotlight on the scene. There were about a dozen people scattered across the beach. All of them were naked. And there, near the water's line, on a colorful mandala-patterned towel, was Sienna. She was lying on her stomach, propped up on her elbows. Her body, which Elias considered private property of their marriage, was exposed to the wind, the sun, and the eyes of strangers. Next to her sat 2 men. One was older, perhaps 40, with long hair. The other was younger, athletic. They were both naked. They were passing a thermos back and forth. Sienna threw her head back and laughed at something the older man said. It was the same laugh she had used in the pharmacy. Free, unburdened. Elias felt a surge of nausea. It was not just the nudity, it was the intimacy of the moment. They were a tribe. He was the outsider. He walked down the sand. His leather shoes sank into the soft surface, making his gait awkward. He did not care. The younger man, likely Marco, saw him first. He stopped talking and tapped Sienna's shoulder. Sienna turned. Her expression shifted from joy to confusion, and then to absolute, draining horror. She scrambled to her knees, instinctively reaching for her towel. She held it against her chest. A futile shield. Elias? Her voice was thin, carried away by the wind. Elias stopped 5 feet away. He stood in his suit, his tie perfectly knotted, staring down at his naked wife and her naked companions. He did not look at the men. He refused to acknowledge their existence. They were merely variables in her deception. The conjugation of verbs, Elias said. His voice was flat, cold. Is this the immersive technique? Sienna's face crumpled. Elias, wait. Please. The older man Dante, presumably cleared his throat. He made no move to cover himself. Hey, man. Take it easy. We're just enjoying nature. Elias turned his head slowly, fixing Dante with a gaze so devoid of emotion that the man actually leaned back. I am not speaking to you. You do not exist in my world. He turned back to Sienna. She was shivering now, though it was not cold. You lied, Elias said. I didn't. I mean, I did, but not about. This isn't what you think. Sienna stammered. We aren't doing anything sexual, Elias. It's naturism. It's about body acceptance. It's about being one with the elements. You told me you were in a classroom, Elias said. You told me you were learning a language. You invented a syllabus. You invented a curriculum. Because I knew you wouldn't understand. Sienna cried, tears mixing with the sand on her face. Look at you, Elias. You're wearing a suit on a beach. You judge everything. You analyze everything. I wanted a place where I didn't have to be perfect. Where I could just be. So you chose to be a liar, Elias corrected. You chose to construct a reality where I am the fool. It's just nudity, she pleaded. She stood up, wrapping the towel tighter, stepping toward him. It's innocent. Dante and Marco are friends. We swim. We talk. That's it. Elias took a step back. The sand crunched under his heel. You spent 7 weeks building a lie, he said. You allocated our funds. You allocated your time. And you allocated your loyalty to a fabrication. It does not matter if you slept with them, Sienna. The betrayal is in the architecture of the deceit. I was going to tell you, she sobbed. Eventually. No, Elias said. You were going to tell me when you got caught. Or never. You enjoyed the secret. It made you feel superior. He looked at the 2 men again. They looked ridiculous to him. Sad. Naked figures on a cold beach. This is over, Elias said. What? No. Sienna reached for his arm. Elias recoiled. As if she were radioactive. Do not touch me. Over? Because I went to a beach? Because you are a stranger, Elias said. And I do not remain married to strangers. He turned around. He walked back up the dune. He did not look back. He heard her calling his name. Her voice shrill and desperate. But he filtered it out. It was just noise. White noise. The divorce was executed with the speed of a hostile corporate takeover. Elias treated the process as a damage control operation. He hired a lawyer named Sterling. A woman who smiled only when discussing retainers. Washington is a no-fault state, Sterling explained. We don't need to prove infidelity. We just file for irretrievable breakdown. It is irretrievable, Elias confirmed. Sienna moved out 3 days after the beach incident. She tried to stay. She sat on the living room floor, weeping, begging for a conversation, for therapy, for a chance to explain the philosophy of naturism. Elias simply worked in his office, with the door locked, until she left. He could not look at her without seeing the lie. Every time she spoke, he heard the discrepancy between her words and the odometer reading. He stayed at Jonas's loft for a week while she packed. You are cold, man, Jonas said one night, handing him a beer. Maybe too cold. She didn't kill anyone. She killed the narrative, Elias said, staring at the label on the beer bottle. She killed the version of reality where I respected her. Maybe you should hear her out. Maybe she just needed an escape. If she needed an escape from me, Elias said, then she should have left. She did not leave. She stayed, and created a simulation. I cannot live in a simulation, Jonas. The proceedings were brief. They had been married for only 3 months. There were no children. No significant joint assets. Other than the lease and some furniture. Elias let her keep everything. The sofa. The bed. The art. He wanted a clean ledger. He wanted zero carryover balance. They met one final time. At the courthouse in October. Sienna looked different. She wore a modest dress. She looked tired. The glow was gone. She approached him in the hallway. "Elias," she said. Softly. He looked at her. He felt a phantom pain in his chest. A variable he couldn't suppress. But he pushed it down. "Sienna. I am sorry," she said. "I really am. I was childish. I was selfish." Elias nodded. "Yes. You were. Can we? In time. Can we maybe get coffee?" she asked. "I miss my best friend." Elias adjusted his cufflink. He looked at her with eyes that were clear, dry, and terrifyingly empty. "No," he said. "That data is corrupted. It cannot be restored." The judge signed the decree. It was done. The marriage of Elias and Sienna was now a historical file. Archived. And closed. 1 year later. Elias sat in a coffee shop in the Pioneer Square district. He was working on a laptop. Analyzing risk assessments for a shipping merger. His life had returned to optimal efficiency. He had moved to a high-rise condo downtown. No yard. No sand. Just steel. And glass. He was dating a woman named Claire. She was an accountant. She was punctual. She did not have secret hobbies. It was a safe investment. He looked up from his screen. And saw her. Sienna was walking on the other side of the street. She was not alone. She was with a group of people. Elias recognized the long hair of Dante. There was another man. Holding Sienna's hand. They were laughing. They looked windblown. Messy. And chaotic. Sienna was wearing a long, bohemian skirt and a tank top. She looked vibrant. For a moment. Time suspended. Elias watched her. He waited for the feeling of vindication. He waited to feel that he had won. That he was the superior being who lived by the code of truth. But the feeling did not come. Instead, he felt a hollow ache. He watched her smile. A real smile. Wide and uncontainable. She was living in her truth. However messy and objectionable he found it. He looked at his reflection in the coffee shop window. A man in a suit. Alone with his data. Correct. Righteous. And utterly stagnant. He realized then that while he had deleted the files, the virus had remained. His inability to forgive, his rigid adherence to protocol, had left him isolated. In his own perfection. Sienna crossed the street, disappearing around a corner. She did not look at him. She had moved on. Elias turned back to his spreadsheet. The numbers were perfect. The logic was sound. He typed a new entry into his mental log. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next.